Hello, my sober lovelies. Before we dive in, I'm really excited to announce my group coaching program for women is live, and you can join now. So excited for this because let's be real here. Quitting drinking isn't just about saying no to the glass of wine or booze. It's about what comes after. All the fear, the boredom, the late night anxiety, and the stories you've been telling yourself for years. And that's where my Rewired Sober group coaching program for women comes in. It's only $247. I'm being totally transparent on the price. It's for 3 months, and you'll learn how to shift your mindset, build habits that actually stick, and question the core beliefs that have been keeping you stuck, and find healthier ways to deal with that loneliness and that now what feeling. The best part is you don't have to do it alone. We'll have live group coaching sessions weekly, and there'll be a bunch of women walking through it with you. It's not another cookie cutter sobriety program for mommy vloggers. It's neuroscience meets real life, and it's designed for women to help you not just stay sober, but actually feel good living sober. You can join anytime, and I'd love to see you on the inside. So start today, get instant access. The link's in the show notes. Welcome to Rewired Sober, the podcast where we unpack what it really takes to rewire your brain after alcohol. Hi, I'm your host, Kate Vitella, a registered nurse, board certified in mental health and addiction, sober since 2018, and a coach who blends neuroscience, lived experience, and real talk to help women break the shame spiral and rebuild their thinking with tools like journaling, humor, and honest conversation. This isn't surface level sobriety. This is where the healing gets deep, grounded, and unapologetically honest. So let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode, coming to you live from New York. I'm recording this, not really sure if I'm actually going to put this out into the world, but I just had all these thoughts and feelings this morning when I woke up, and I decided that like a writer who, when they are overloaded with thoughts, they need to write, I need to speak. I need to record. I need to get my thoughts out into the universe. And so I thought I would just kind of riff on what's been running through my mind this trip. As I've said before, I love New York. I recorded an episode on my 7-year sobriety because I come to New York in February every year on my soberversary. And so I did record that episode when I was here, when it was like snowing. And today is May 16th, and it is warm here. And it's, coming in the spring is a much different experience. So I'm going to take you through a little scenic route: recovery, self-discovery, and this beautiful chaotic in between. All of it, it's such a journey. And so what I thought what I really want to start with is, well, first of all, sorry about the noise. Sorry, not sorry, because I am sitting at the uncoveted Canal Street lofts. These are probably the most ghetto place I've ever stayed, but also perfect. This room smells like stale cigarettes. Like, I often wondered in Sex and the City how Carrie Bradshaw smoked in her apartment. And as much as she loved her clothes, didn't all her clothes reek of cigarette smoke? Now, obviously, she's a fictitious character, but that thought went through my head because this room smells so bad that the dress I'm wearing later tonight has stayed in a dust bag just in case that I show up there and it smells like this room. It smells so bad here. It's like stale cigarettes and bleach. The fridge hums to this loud, obnoxious sound, and I've learned to sort of just kick it to, like, get it to stop. The headboard of this bed is so cheaply upholstered in this, like, ugly brownish, like, copper. I don't even know what this fabric is. The fabric is all ripped and torn off, and what I love about this place is they don't even care. They don't care that their guests are walking in and being like, this is so awesome." There is these really crappy, like, I don't even wanna call it art. I don't know what it is. It's like these pictures hanging on the walls, and go Canal Street Loft right here in Chinatown because these images are like caricatures of, it's like a cartoonish type thing, and they're y like kids, I guess, playing trumpets and, like, smoking and riding bikes, and these characters look like a cross between Kim Jong Un and Carrot Top, maybe? It's just such a bizarre decor here at the Canal Street Lofts. My view is of the Grill and Chill 24/7 deli, and, I see the Golden Town Adult Daycare Center. So, this is the New York experience, that I have yet to have because while I've ventured into Chinatown and Little Italy, I have never stayed here, and so this trip has been pretty interesting. And not to mention fun. Oh my god, I'm having so much fun. And I will get to this in a little bit, but I'm realizing, I'm kind of a Lower East Sider. Like, I'm all about some grit, and this feels like the real New York that I envisioned. So, yesterday, I went to the Met to see the superfine tailoring and, dandy exhibit, and I'll write about this, the exhibit for the sober curator. But afterward, I went on to Madison Avenue. The Met is right there, like on Madison and Park and that right by Central Park. Anyway, and P.S. Like, what's with Love Shack Fancy and J. Crew being on Madison Avenue? Like, is that considered tip top fashion these days? I mean, I'm so confused. It's like weird preppy esque. I can't even. But anyway, yesterday, after the Met exhibit, it's later in the afternoon. I'm wearing like really random clothes because I'm a horrible packer. Like, I pack the weirdest stuff. As you would think, as much as I love clothes and fashion, that I would put some effort into this. But I'm wearing like, I can't even remember what I wore yesterday, but it didn't make sense. It wasn't even like cool eclectic, it was just weird, and, like, stuff that doesn't go together, and it was bad. By the end of the exhibit in the afternoon, I was kind of sweaty, like, it's humid here, and my hair is just this fuzzy nightmare. Oh, I know what I was wearing. I was wearing a skirt with sneakers and, a tank top, and, like, I didn't shave my legs because I didn't think it would show. Anyway, I just look so bad. So, when I was done, like, window shopping on Madison Avenue, I went to get an Uber back to my real life at the Canal Street Lofts. Um, and I'm standing there on the corner, and school had just gotten out, and, I'm watching all of the Park Avenue moms get their kids from school, and really, there wasn't even a lot of moms, there was a lot of nannies. I saw, nannies in, uniform, scrubs, picking up kids. So it was like after school special, lots of kids, lots of people around. And I'm looking at these women and totally judging, not gonna lie, but I'm imagining their life, right? And I'm imagining they live on the Upper East Side, they don't work, they leave their apartment or townhouse to go get their kids from some kind of specialties. I can't even think of the name when you're it's a private school where there's, extracurricular activities that I didn't have, or they just send their freaking nanny to get their kids because they're not, they're too fantastic. And of course, I'm looking at the fashion. And I looked down at my skirt and my unshaved legs and I think I was wearing, like, Reeboks. I mean, come on. And I felt this sudden pang of massive insecurity. Like, my tattoos and my bad clothes and my fuzzy hair, it just brought me all the way back to adolescence, high school days when those were the things that I was the most insecure about. That my appearance, my wild curly fuzzy hair that wasn't Park Avenue straight blonde, wispy hair, lots of body hair, like, that I'm overly muscular and that, just all of that, my wild eyebrows, my greasy skin, all of that brought me back to growing up feeling so much on the outside. And I've talked about this on this podcast before. And some of the insecurities and the sort of pick me girl attitude that led me into my drinking and not to blame all that, right? Because in adolescence, we're all insecure and we all feel, afraid of the world and we hate the way we look. And adolescence is a nightmare, right? Like to be a 13 or 14-year-old young girl is like the worst. It's a difficult experience no matter what. Like you hear about models talking about their adolescence and they were awkward and too tall and too skinny, right? So I'm not making myself unique in that sense. And that's not an excuse for me to become a raging alcoholic, but as I'm standing there, suddenly all of it comes back and it just made so much sense in that moment of like, I'm on the outside, I'm this lesser version of, and I will never be a Park Avenue princess. You know, at best, I will go to Princess Polly in like Times Square. I don't even know if there's one there, but you get what I'm saying. And I'm just I'm thinking that these moms probably think I'm a hooker because I was waiting for my discounted Uber to get me to the other side of town, and it was like, if you wait for a discounted Uber, you can wait like 10 minutes and it's cheaper. I mean, and all the while, I'm like, "God, I hope my credit card's not declined." And, I felt down when I got into the Uber. I felt low. The high from the Met Gala was gone and back was insecure Kate. And I saw these people outside at cafes drinking. And, I'm 7 years sober and I have ranted on this podcast so much about discovering who I am and coming into my identity and my confidence. And I still felt this weird, like, gut feeling of lesser than. It was just and it was kinda sickening. It was about a 40-minute drive, because it was traffic and all the way back to Lower East Side. Now I'm back in Chinatown, back on Canal Street, and I decided to kind of regroup and quit feeling sorry for myself and take a walk. And so I walked down to Broadway where I stumbled upon Pat Field's store, which is one of my favorite things here. It's Patricia Field's art fashion, and if you're living under a rock, Pat Fields is the renowned stylist who did the wardrobe styling for Sex and the City and The Devil Wears Prada and Emily in Paris. So many that I can't even list. She has an amazing documentary on some of the work that she's done. I've admired her for years. So she has a store on Broadway, and I walked down, and they just so happen to still be open, and it's like 30 minutes till closing. And and I'm like, "You know what? I'm going in." And in my episode where I recorded about being 7 years sober in New York, I think I touched on the fact that I met her, and I was so excited. And so I thought, she's not gonna be in there, but it's worth, peeking around at her stuff, which is always so grounding because it's, like, sort of gritty and graffiti and, it's just like, Lower East Side voguing from the '80s, and she's such a big advocate for LGBTQ and people of color. I could go on about her forever, but I walk in, there she is sitting at the desk. And then I realized, well, she must just be here a lot because in between doing all this, costume design, this store has been a big part of who she is. She's always had a store. She's always had a retail location in New York. So and I think she's done with those big projects now. She's gotta be in her mid-80s. So she's in there, and I'm thinking, be cool, like, don't go up to her this time, and don't make an ass of yourself. Because last time I met her, I was so nervous that I said a bunch of really stupid things, and I wanted to take a picture with her, and I was so, like, that girl. I was like, "I'm that bitch who is starstruck." So I'm playing it cool, and looking around, and I feel this tap on my shoulder, and I turn over, and it's Pat, and she's like, "I want you to know," in her voice. I just love her voice. She's like, "I just want you to know that I've been admiring your figure." And I was like, "Oh, well, thank you. Patfield just paid me a compliment. I can die now." And then she started talking to me about, looking fit in the whatever clothes I was wearing, bad yoga pants. And I just felt like this was the moment that I just needed someone to talk to. So nothing like dumping on Pat Fields, right? And I said, Pat, I just came from the Upper East Side and I realized I will never be a Park Avenue princess. And she was like, "That's okay. I love the way you look." And I said, I have tattoos. I'm in recovery. I'm from Seattle. It's more of a grungy aesthetic. And I started just like way over explaining and nervous. And she calmly said something to the effect of, "So what? So many people have tattoos and just be the way that you are." And something around like, just own it and love yourself. And I was like, that's exactly what I needed to hear today. I needed to be grounded in the fact that, my entire life, I wanted to be a Park Avenue princess. I wanted so much to have this old wealth experience or college experience, or I wanted so desperately to fit in. And I've talked a lot about that and the damage it did to me as a adolescent and even into my 20s and 30s, the damage it did to me in hustling and drinking to prove my worth. And so that's my Pat Field story of how in just those few moments, she really just made me remember that who I am is enough. So cheesy, I know. But, I bought a little cheetah clutch while I was in there and I showed her my cheetah tattoo and how I just love a cheetah print and like it's everything to me. Like cheetah print is everything to me. And in a lot of circles, that can be kind of tacky, you know? I mean, when the mob wife trend came around, I was like, dude, I don't need to buy anything. My wardrobe is mob wives. Like I was made for this. I'm like a tacky Jersey lady with big nails and big boobs and I'm not even Lower East Side. I'm probably Jersey. So, and I showed her my little tattoo I just got that said, "I love New York." And she was like, "That's great. Love it. Love it for yourself." And I said, "You know what, Pat? New York is my boyfriend. Seattle is my husband, but I love it here. And I just love the openness of the Lower East Side." And she was like, "Yeah, like basically that's why she's there. That's why my shop is here." And, she's standing there, all 75 pounds of her soaking wet. She has 1 cigarette in her hand and a lighter, and she's getting ready to go outside and smoke. And I just felt like, she felt like my people, and it just was this cool moment of realizing that, yeah, like, fuck Park Avenue, you know? I love the grit and the chaos and sort of the authentic vibe of the Lower East Side. So, and circling back to this thought of always wanting to be perceived a certain way or look a certain way, you know, I didn't have the college experience. Like, I didn't have parents that could afford it at the time. And I had to hustle. I paid my way through community college quarter by quarter by living with my grandparents and working at Ross Dress for Less for $4.90 an hour. all right? Like, I'm dating myself here. I made less than $5 an hour. No, $5 an hour when I got promoted to customer service. Thank you for shopping at Ross. And so my point is that I paid my way through community college. I was never one of those college kids who had a dorm and their parents paid for them. And even though on a college kid budget, they still had like some cool clothes and they had money for beer and pizza and, you know, their life was so carefree. Like I never really felt like I had a carefree youth. Um, Even in high school and then, going immediately into college, I felt like I really needed to be the responsible one because it was so important to me to get out of a small town and to succeed and make something of myself. I didn't want to be like the kids that I went to high school with. Where I went to high school, we had like the highest abortion rate in per capita in the US or something ridiculous, like a lot of poverty and farms and logging and very small industry and like not a lot of jobs. And my goal was to get out. And so, yeah, I mean, when I was very, very serious in my 20s, and I think now that now that I had this Madison Avenue moment, I think I was sort of, when I started drinking, I think I was sort of cosplaying a free spirited college kid, like pretending that I had a little money and that I was, I don't know, fancy free, that I could drink and, drink with my friends. And I wanted to be that party girl. And it was like I wanted to relive what I didn't have as college years or even high school years where I was really all that carefree. I wanted to relive all that in my late 20s and even into my 30s. Cringe, because I grew up so fast. And yeah, and I was really living a life like pretending. And I started thinking about cosplay in general. Like we all cosplaying something. And is that how we get into our drinking self, There was an element of me, not only did I cosplay free-spirited college kid, but drinking helped me cosplay the carefree part, and it seemed, like, so easy at the time, I was drinking to maintain the role and somewhat to soothe the cognitive dissonance that or stay in character, right? Because I knew in my gut this wasn't really who I was, and it helped me kind of, that glass of wine in hand, that martini in hand, out with the friends, really helped me. It was like I was on set and that was my alcohol was my prop. And of course, the alcohol industry markets that to us, I see it all over Manhattan right now. I see college kids, and God, I hope they're in college or maybe early 20s, but cosplaying wealth, the sweater over their shoulders, like the ponytail with the little small gold earrings and looking like they just got off the tennis court or, they're headed to the Hamptons and they're sitting outside drinking like a martini, sort of cosplaying this Upper East Side, we're all cosplaying something. And that could be, partly due to the political climate we're in, like, let's be white old money pigs. I don't even wanna go okay, I'm not even gonna go there. But, there's this whole aesthetic that's going on right now, and I see it all over New York, and it's even trickled down to the freaking Nordstrom Rack where I live. And so, you know, I got back to my hotel room after the Pat Fields thing, and I was like, "Gosh, we are all cosplaying something." And how freeing and how liberating to realize that you belong on that Lower East Side, Like, I look out the window here, and it is workers, putting produce away, and people in their dry cleaning business, and people catching public transportation, and it's loud and gritty, but so is my real life, and so is it, most of reality. So it just felt so liberating to own that, and, I also wanna circle back to how easy it became in my college years, my 20s, to sort of cosplay this glam girl, drinking, carefree, and then as sort of how alcohol just came in and snuck up on me. I was never a person who drank in high school, but when I got into this persona, I guess if you will, it really snuck up on me. And, I kind of fell into that anxiety trap. Like, I'm a little bit of an anxious person naturally. And so, I was constantly fighting the anxiety. And we talk a lot about the chemical tricks of alcohol, like how it manipulates our dopamine and causes anxiety, and eventually it leads to addiction. But now I can step back and see it sort of all the way, to its core, because alcohol is a chemical double cross, right? As a alcohol educator, as a nurse, as a coach, I talk about this. We all know it starts with a rush of dopamine. Your brain feels really good. It makes you feel confident. You're social, you're more carefree. But then here's the catch. For every spike, there's a crash. And when alcohol wears off, your dopamine levels plummet and leaves you really anxious, irritable, and desperate for relief. And that's where the anxiety is, right? And when you're a young person going out, that anxiety sort of persists at a low level. It's almost undetectable for a while. And I thought a lot of times when I was young that I was just overly anxious, but then I drank because I was anxious. And so I kept myself in that loop, because the more you chase that high, the more your brain's natural dopamine system gets hijacked and you become dependent on drinking just to feel normal. So is something that I can look at now from a perspective of an adult who uses actual decent coping mechanisms to cope with my anxiety. You know, Yesterday when I was walking around the city, I found myself smiling and laughing and thinking, actually, because this is the work I do, that, wow, I'm producing like real dopamine. Like, this is legit happiness. I could see pigeons. I could see people outdoor dining. I could hear the honking and the sirens. The weather was good. I had just spent some time with Pat, and I'm smiling and laughing, thinking, okay, now I need to go get some nylons for this event and this and that. And I'm just looking at the elderly people wheeled out onto the street so they could people watch. And it's like, that's that natural dopamine that comes in. And it really hit me there that I lived in an anxiety trap when I was younger, trying to cosplay with my looks and my wardrobe and my lifestyle and the drink in the hand, and how it just persisted into this nasty loop. It's like I had a little self-compassion, walking down the street. I'm like, I get it. It's okay that you felt like shit on Park Avenue. It's okay that you're not ever gonna be you're never gonna be a Madison Avenue girl. That's okay, right? You have fuzzy hair, and in high school, you had one eyebrow. You know? You went to community college, but I'm still a fucking badass, and, um, I'm still my own best friend. Like, I would hang out with me. Pat Fields would hang out with me, okay? Like, let's be really clear here. So, gosh, talk about New York City as a mirror, right? It's like you see yourself. It's revealed to you when, you're not trying to be anyone else. And maybe you're not a Park Avenue princess either. Maybe you are Lower East Side grit, with a little bit of a chaotic life, and that's okay. That's perfect. I fucking love that. You know? Tonight I'm going to Sober is the New Cool, Kim Bellis, her white party. I think it's in Times Square. So I will huff it over there, and I'm going to meet up with a bunch of women in sobriety. We'll be wearing all white. I'm so excited, and I will actually have Kim on the pod after the party. We'll kind of debrief on that. But Another reason I come here to the city is because there's so many great alcohol-free events and options and venues, so much more so than, I live in Olympia near Seattle, so it's a smaller area and it's not as, ubiquitous now as the mocktail culture is here. So I will meet up with those gals, and really I tell clients, when it comes to having friends in sobriety, when it comes to in real life relationships with other women, or if you're a man, other men, um, it's sort of like online dating, whereas you get involved in the sober Instagram community or the sober online community, and you sort of have to like be really intentional about reaching out to people, introducing yourself, just like you would if you were like looking for a partner on a dating app. You have to really make an effort. And so many of the people that I am friends with in real life now, it's because I get on a freaking plane and I'm like, you know what? Seattle to New York, here I come. Not that I need an excuse to come to the city, but I will meet with these people because it's so important to me to have friends in sobriety that this is like a big intentional move to connect with people and to connect in real life, not just over Zoom meetings. I used to say like all my friends lived in my computer or they were anonymous, but yeah, like the advice I try to give people is go at finding your sober friends, your sober group, your gals, your peers. If you want to go to events and parties, be super intentional about it, because that's, like, the only way, because we're not out there as much as all the girls at the bar, so we have to do a little bit of extra work to find each other. Oh, and speaking of, as I was meandering the streets a couple days ago, I went into Spirited Away, which is one of the first, I think, non-alcoholic, maybe Boysen was here in New York, I can't remember, but opened in 2020, a full NA, bottle shop. They have everything, and I am going to have the owner on the pod. I love New York. And so, but I was talking to one of the gals working in there about drinking culture and what it's like living in the city. She's in Harlem, but essentially we were talking about socializing. She's younger, and we were talking about socializing and how we didn't wanna give up the social aspect. All of our friends, we didn't wanna be left out of the party, and she said, I actually see people in the city now, they are drinking even if they don't wanna be sober, they're drinking regular drinks up to, like, 2 or maybe 3, and then switching to an NA option. And I thought, how interesting is that? That even though they're maybe not even sober curious, they still know enough about their own body and self, and they know enough about alcohol to cut themselves off. And so even if that's the only time that a mocktail might come into play, I mean, that's super helpful. I mean, I can't even imagine, when I was in my 20s and 30s binging on Sex and the City and wine, if I would have stopped after 2 glasses and switched to an NA. I mean, we didn't have any of those options back then. Back in the day when I was in my 20s. Um, but yeah, it's super interesting. So I'm gonna wrap it up here, but I'm off to Manhattan Vintage, where I will buy probably too much shit because overconsumption is the thing. I need to have a pot on shopping addiction, but I'm off to Manhattan Vintage and then to the white party. In fact, Kim Bellis is texting me now, so I gotta go. Thanks for hanging out with me and putting up with this rant. I love you all, and I really appreciate the support. Also, if you are in a place where you're kind of in that gray area and you've been contemplating a lot of stuff, check out my course, The Gut Check. It linked in the show notes. It is there for you for sort of a quiet reflection of what's running through your mind. If you're hearing that whisper, I really encourage that to for self-discovery. And like I said, I can't imagine what would have changed for me had I had that available to me in my 20s or 30s. So that's all from me. I'm signing off. Thanks for tuning in to Rewired Sober. You can find me on my Instagram at Rewired Sober, where there are links to catch up with me and all the things I'm working on in my coaching business, or the link tree to my business directly will be in the show notes. I so appreciate you joining me on this journey, and I welcome any feedback or any topics you want to hear about, things that you're struggling with or interested in. I love you all so very much, and I'm just so enjoying doing this with you.